In 2005, when I was 13 and in my third year of my secondary school, I took part in an outdoor team building scheme called the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme. For anyone outside of the British Isles, it is an expedition involving hill walking and mountaineering in groups of about 6 for 2 nights and 3 days. It's normally organised by schools and churches, and also involves charity work and skill building exercises during the year. When you're 13, you're eligible for the bronze level, and in my area, this involved a reasonably straightforward walk with the exciting but daunting prospect of camping for one night right in the middle of a local forest called Ballybolly Forest in Larne, Northern Ireland. Now, I wasn't the fittest of kids, but I was with a group of friends and it turned out to be good fun. The first 2 days involved nothing more exciting than navigating fields and hills, and it went without incident. On the last night, however, we ended up camping right in the middle of Ballybolly Forest with all of the other groups. We camped at the very foot of a fire break, which is a long, thin stretch of ground with no trees, which means you can see for quite some distance with nothing hindering your vision. There were no teachers or leaders at this campsite, so naturally all hell broke loose. At about 8:15 p.m, as the light was beginning to dim, someone in another group began to ramble on about seeing people at the other end of the fire break, moving about between the trees. In case it was another group who had gotten lost, a few of us marched up the fire break to check it out. It was about a 5-minute walk, and there was nothing but more trees and shrubbery, not a road or a natural footpath in sight. So it wasn't taken very seriously, until about an hour later. We were all gathered around a gas stove, having hot chocolate, when someone else noticed some kind of movement down at the far end of the fire break. This time, the figures that had been previously sighted were holding some kind of torches, but this is where it got a bit stranger. Rather than modern torches or mag lights, the figures seemed to be holding what were either branches that had been set on fire or some kind of oil lanterns that you held out in front of you. We counted 4 of these figures. Someone later that night, who lived on a farm and would therefore know a bit about this, claimed that after the figures had vanished, they could hear sounds like an abattoir in the distance, echoing cries and squeals of animals. Needless to say, after the figures vanished, our young imaginations ran wild, and we began to assume the worst was about to happen. There was a lot of discussion and freaking out before we eventually calmed down and told ourselves that it was probably just other groups in the forest. So we decided the best course of action was for everybody to go to their tents, keep torches handy, and stick together. The next morning, save for a few rumours of figures and lights being seen running around the tents, we laughed it off and carried on with the expedition, without further incident. I know you wanted a woodland story, and honestly, England is full of them. My home city itself has quite a few for various reasons. The most common is a stretch of road named Gibbet Hill, which has been there since medieval times, and as the name suggests, it was used for the hanging and displaying of bodies. This went on for quite a long way, and the road leads to Kenilworth Castle. The road is obviously now modern, and built over what would have originally been an old dirt road. Still, all along it are large green areas, like a memorial park, and a section of very old woodland known as the Devil's Dungeon, as it has huge dips running through it, where kids would ride their BMXs or dirt bikes up and down. In this same area of the wood are supposedly the remains of those criminals who were eventually taken down from the gibbets. Not being allowed Christian burials, they were dumped here. I've heard many stories about shadows seen in this wood, but the thing I saw along this road wasn't one of these chaps. I was sharing a house with some friends on a road that connected to Gibbet Hill Road, and had been taking my dog for his last walk of the evening to the park. It was getting dark, and I decided to take a shortcut through a small road which takes you to an exit leading to the main road, of which I lived on the other side of. I wasn't panicking about it getting dark, having a big Alsatian dog with me. Plus, this was one of the quieter areas of the city, as it's on the edge. Anyway, I was walking down this small road called Coat of Arms Bridge Road, and ahead is a bridge. It's not huge, but the local train runs along it. While nearing the bridge, ahead of me I saw the weirdest thing. This road is lit with street lights, including one light under the bridge. This light under the bridge seemed oddly dim, and standing there, in front of the bridge, was a tall shadow of a man. There was no solid form, just a pitch black shape. He was doing the most creepy movement as he started to cross the road, like tiptoeing, but kind of hunched. It was damn creepy. My dog was going mental and would not move forward so that we could run to the exit. I took another look to see if this freak was coming my way as I was urging my dog to move, but there was no sign of him, and nowhere he could have gone without being seen. Finally, I got the dog to follow me to the exit. When I got home, I told my housemates, one of whom said, "Bloody hell, didn't you know about the guy on Coab Road?" Apparently, a few years before, a man with some mental health issues had sat under the bridge in the early hours and set himself on fire. He died some time after. I have had some raccoon problems in the last few weeks. We have, or I should say had, 6 chickens. Within 2 evenings we lost 2 to the raccoons. We know they are raccoons because we saw them from the second floor looking out the window in the evening. A co-worker of mine, who we will call Billy, overheard me telling another about losing my chickens, and he had offered his services to come out and exterminate them. We agreed for him to come out on a Saturday evening. He and his friend would come out and camp for a couple of hours around the chicken coop late at night to pick them off as they came. Around 8:30 in the evening, they pulled into the driveway, got their gear out, and decided on a change of plans. Because of the layout of the property and the woods, they decided to first go and check the abandoned camper, then patrol the pines, and then patrol the woods in the back. Within 10 minutes, I received a text from him saying they got a huge one in the camper and were now going to patrol the pines. I replied with, "Great job, guys, but be careful in the pines. There are a couple of deep bunkers within the pines. Don't trip into them." About 15 minutes later, I walked out onto the deck from the second floor and saw them coming back. I asked how it went, and they told me they thought they better come back to the house. What happened was, they walked deep within the woods, looking up into the pines to pick them out of the trees. As they proceeded, they heard branches and needles crunching. They thought maybe it was a coyote. They looked down in the snow and saw some tracks. The noises grew, and it seemed like there was more than one now. They felt they were being circled. Worried that they had stumbled upon a den, they hightailed it back to the house. They then told me they were going back into the woods. I thought maybe this wasn't a good idea, so I tried to talk them out of it. I told them I had heard strange stories about those woods at night. Their reply was that they have dealt with scary things in the woods before, and that they would be fine. Okay then, good luck on your journey, and I shall see you on the other side, I told them, and went back inside. About 10 minutes later, I received a text. We are leaving. I walked outside to catch up with them before they left. At the start of the night, before they had entered the woods, I had seen two young men with their firearms, confident and all ramboed up for the extermination. When I saw them on their return, they were 3 shades whiter, eyes wide open, and they were talking so fast, I had to ask them to slow down. One of them just put his guns away and got right into the truck. Billy explained to me what had happened. They walked down the path, and while walking, they felt they were being watched. They heard a big crack of a branch on the ground behind them. They quickly turned and flashed their spotlight, and saw nothing. No noise of an animal running away, no broken branches, nothing. They continued down the path, and about midway, Billy saw what had looked like a glowing white blob, roughly about 5 feet tall and hovering. They flashed the light on it, and it moved so fast that it was just a blur as it disappeared. Then, while talking to each other and asking if they each saw it, they heard branches and twigs crunching behind them. The other saw it again, and as they flashed the light, it again disappeared. This happened 2 more times, and each time the thing appeared to be getting closer and closer. It was messing with them, or stalking them. This is when I received the text, after they had run back to the house. I have only had this type of experience once. It was very creepy. First, let me start off with some background. I live in Maine, and I grew up surrounded by woods, playing in the woods and taking walks in the woods. The woods are like a second home to me. When I first got married to my husband, we had to put some finishing touches on our home, which is a guest house on land we share with his parents. So we ended up living in a camper on the corner of the property, completely surrounded by woods, until the house was ready. About a month later, we finally moved in, although we still had some of our things in the camper and in storage. I remember about 2 to 3 weeks after moving into our new home, my husband and his parents went to a business meeting, and I was home alone, for which I was excited because I got to have some time alone. So I had no feelings of anxiety on that day about being alone on our land. I decided to make myself useful and bring some things down from the camper. I remember I stepped out of my house and I got about 5 feet away when something happened. All sounds of birds, insects, and small creatures just stopped completely. And I had the sudden sensation that I was being watched. And I don't mean like there was one person or thing watching me. I mean, I felt as if the trees themselves were alive and watching me intensely. It felt like I was surrounded and being watched from all directions. So I hurried my pace. When I reached the camper, I went inside and grabbed a box of stuff. I told myself I was being silly, but when I walked back outside, that same menacing sensation was present. The trees were watching, I felt it the entire time I walked back from the camper, being watched intensely from all directions within the woods. And everything was utterly silent, except my own footsteps.